Hey, how mankind, so good to see you. I'm here today with Karen Dufresne. Karen's the director, as you know, of the Voyager Community School. Karen's here today to tell us about Critical Hope. Karen, over to you.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, so many different intentions in terms of what I might speak about today, but in the moment and in the period of history we're in, I think it's just vitally important to speak about critical hope. So, yeah, as we, I think, can all agree, these are pretty dark days that we're experiencing. You know, given pandemic, record unemployment, violence against color, and peaceful protests clashing with looting, rioting, and our own police and military. You know, you have to ask yourself, what does this come to? Where is love? Where's respect? And a sense of critical hope. Before I explain critical hope, I want to just say to you, you know, that you've heard me before say that I'm not a fan of hope. Hope, in my opinion, the word can lead to inaction. It can lead to waiting for someone else to take responsibility. You can hope for it, for instance, but not have to do it. I hope for it, therefore, my parents should bring it to me, my teacher should bring it to me, my employer should provide it for me. And so I've struggled with the word hope. But I think when you put the word critical before critical hope, then it has a different meaning. And without it, I actually think without it, we fail to take action. I think what's being seen and heard and said through the actions of violent and violent actions and verbal slurs has obviously reached a critical intensity. And for most of us, our sense of equilibrium is completely off kilter. Our emotions are high, our comprehensions have been lost. I know for myself, and I think for many others, for most of us, we're left to scream at the TV and to sort of armchair solve what is too complex and yet so simple. It's so simple. I just expect that we could stop the violence, we could stop the hate, and we could kneel together and we could listen. Just take a moment and listen. You know, as an educator for 30 years, I can only view this through the lens of someone responsible for shaping children, for shaping the next generation. So this causes me so much pain, this moment that we're in, because I worry about our children and how we can help our children. And when we cannot, you know, how we can help our children when we can't even seem to do it for ourselves. And again, I return to the answer, which is the gift of critical hope. So if we're feeding our children the fuel that sustains positive expectations and inspires action and activism, that's critical hope. If you can critically hope, you can then take action. You can then see a way out that is upon you and that you can share with others. If we can help children and sort of give them permission to take a stand through speaking out, through lighting a candle, through praying to their God, to carrying a sign, to helping a person in fear or pain, to shouting in the streets or extending ideas through writing. If we can give permission to children to do that, if we can show them the way to do that, then we will all be moving in this form of activism with this critical hope. The truth is that we must do it now, that rights must be exercised. Otherwise, they're just merely a theory. To say we have essential rights in this moment is questionable. It's an idea. And if we don't exercise our right, it remains just an idea. And if we don't show how to exercise our right to our children, then they will not do so. They will not be given the power to do so. They will know how to do so. It's the values that our country was built on, and that helps our country to progress. We've seen this time and time again, small and large efforts made through social justice and social change movements, and through the work of individuals who've brought about progress. Some of those individuals very ordinary and some very extraordinary. You know, if you look back and you think about Rosa Parks, Ruby Bridges, Ida B. Wells, Audre Lorde, and the organizers of Black Lives Matter, Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tomeli, you can see guidance and inspiration. You can see how critical hope has been used to affect change, to give people voice and give them sense of power. I think for our children, they need to know that they have a sense of power and they have a voice. People talk about agency, giving children agency. This is part of what they mean by that, giving children the ability to speak. So how do we begin? Where do we start? I think that you don't avoid talking about it. You know, racism and violence are things that parents are reluctant to address. They want to protect their children from being frightened or upset. But children can come to more harm if we don't speak about it. They'll come to harmful conclusions about race, and they'll be more guarded in their freedom to speak about it. Isn't part of the problem that we don't speak about race? We're so careful. But I think this is a time when we need to show children how we can speak about race, and that is to do it with them. It's important to try and be calm and be factual, to remember that this isn't, in a sense, your time, it's your child's time. So children take their clues from parents. Talking to them calmly helps them to process information. You don't have to necessarily hide your emotional reactions, but you have to try not to let those emotional reactions overwhelm the conversation. So it's best to sort of practice to get ready for these conversations and to be comfortable in the words that you might use and the way that you might step forward in this conversation. I think it's also vitally important to validate their feelings. This is where the listening comes in, right? We've been talking week after week about listening. So it's vitally important to listen. How are they feeling? That may be conveyed through questions. It may be conveyed through silence. It may be conveyed through body language. It may be conveyed through anger, frustration, and other sort of what we might infer as negative reactions. But what they are is surfacing feelings. So be aware of them and be aware of the fact that this is going to look different in every child. You know, your child might be afraid of riots, or they might be afraid of being hurt by police themselves, or they might be afraid of a person of color. They might be afraid to speak out because they're afraid that they might say the wrong thing. There's so many ways in which we can be fearful. And these fears that the children have, in many ways, that we carry the same fears. So you have to kind of process through that for yourself, be ready to listen and be ready to react and to validate the feelings. You don't have to make them feel better. You have to just validate how they feel. And then just continue to encourage the questions, continue to encourage the conversation. And don't worry if you can't answer something. It's fair to say, I don't really know the answer to that. Maybe we can explore that together. Maybe we can come back to that. Be okay with the fact that you might not have an immediate answer. You might not have an answer. Some of this is very hard to know. And I think by saying I don't know, or I don't have that answer in this moment, is also to allow a child to realize that they don't know and they don't have an answer in this moment. I think when we're talking to younger children, to older children, then there's a more nuanced conversation, because older children will recognize the racism around them. And you can help them to formulate ways to respond productively so that they can be a part of the change that we so desperately need. Oftentimes, children, for instance, what we call our middle school ages, 12 to 14, can be very quick in their judgments and can be very harsh in their words. And so that then creates another level of friction, another level of pushback between peers, between parent and child, between teacher and child. So helping your children to recognize racism and speak in a productive way about racism, address people that they feel have expressed racism in productive ways is desperately needed. Children may react, again, in what is seemingly insensitive ways, but guidance by a parent, by a teacher, can shift their reaction, the way in which they react, can shift their awareness of how they impact someone else when they're speaking about racism. You know, children do have a maturity and an understanding to think about sensitive issues, and race is one of them, certainly. They need to take a look at themselves. They need to take a look at their communities. They need to look at their families, and they need to find ways to explore this topic and to eliminate racism. You know, children are experiencing viral videos, media overload, perpetual conversations. They're hearing about police and the stresses of the day. They're hearing about violence against color, Black and brown color, and they see it repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly. And they're trying to be a part of the conversation. They're trying to sort it out. And they need you to be present. They need you to help. They need you to listen. You know, you have to decide what this looks like for your family, but it's essential to deliver that message of critical hope. We can hope with activism. We can hope with involvement. We can be critically hopeful. And that's where I've come in this circle and where I believe we should be coming as parents and as educators.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Karen. I think the one key takeaway for everyone here is to be engaged and be involved with their children on this, to not hide away from it. And obviously this video has been shot at a very sensitive time, and everybody at Hack Mankind's thoughts go out to everybody involved. We understand that we don't understand, but we also understand we need to listen. And whether we're talking just from the lens of America or from the world, we have a way to go. But the people at Hack Mankind certainly stand behind that journey, and whatever we can do to help the building. Karen, thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.